I wasn't looking for anyone. After everything life had taken from me, love wasn't even a word I let myself think about anymore. But the night his hand brushed mine, so gently I almost convinced myself it was an accident. Something inside me woke up that I thought had died years ago. I didn't trust it. I didn't trust him. I didn't even trust myself. But the way he looked at me, the way he saw through the walls I'd spent a lifetime building, it scared me in a way that felt dangerously close to hope. And I'll be honest with you, this isn't a story about lust or impulse. This is a story about two people who weren't supposed to find each other, who weren't planning to feel anything, who weren't ready, and yet something pulled them closer anyway. Before this night was over, one question kept echoing in my mind. What if the thing you fear the most is the thing that finally brings you back to life? If you've ever felt love return to you when you weren't ready, if someone ever reached for you so softly it broke your defenses, then stay with me. Because what happened between us didn't happen fast. It didn't happen loud. It happened in the quiet, in the space between a heartbeat and a breath. And once it started, there was no going back. His hand didn't pull, it invited. A simple gesture, fingers warm against my palm, grounding me with a quiet certainty that made my pulse jump. There was nothing hurried in the way he guided me toward the softly lit living room. Nothing demanding, just a steady, quiet assurance that told me he already knew I wasn't going to turn back. The room felt different tonight, not because anything had changed in the decor, but because of the way he was watching me, like he was mapping every shift in my breath, every subtle tremor in my posture, like he wanted to understand me before he ever touched me too deeply. He closed the door behind us with a slow click, then he stood there for a moment, studying me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Not lust, not hunger, something far more dangerous. Recognition. Sit, he murmured. Just one word. Calm. Warm. Certain. I lowered myself to the edge of the couch, my heart beat uneven. He didn't join me right away. He stood in front of me, hands resting loosely at his sides, as if giving me space to pull back or step closer. You're not nervous, he said quietly. You're curious. My breath caught. He wasn't guessing, he was observing, seeing the way my fingers rested loosely on my knees instead of gripping them. The way my shoulders weren't tense, just expectant. The way I kept my gaze on him instead of looking away. That's dangerous, he added softly. Curiosity makes you bold. And you don't like bold? I asked. He smiled a small, knowing curve. I like honesty. Then he finally sat beside me, not too close at first. A deliberate, thoughtful distance. Enough to make me feel the pull. The gravity of him. Enough to make every inch between us feel like an invitation waiting to be crossed. I noticed you long before the thin walls, he said. My breath stalled. He continued, voice low, steady. You walk like someone who thinks more than she speaks. Someone who watches a room before stepping into it. Someone who feels things deeply, even when she pretends she doesn't. Heat stirred beneath my ribs. Not the kind that rushed, but the kind that unfolded. How do you know that? I whispered. He tilted his head slightly, eyes softening as they held mine. Because that's how I am. The truth of that hit harder than anything else tonight. The women, the nights, the sounds. I'd imagined confidence, practice skill, maybe even vanity. But sitting here, inches from him, I felt none of that. I felt restraint. Stillness. A man who measured every word before he spoke it. He was quiet not because he was hiding something, but because he carried too much. I exhaled slowly. Why me? His gaze dropped to my hands, then rose back to my face with such deliberate focus that my stomach fluttered. Because you listen, he murmured. Not to the noise, but to the emotion behind it. My chest tightened. He leaned the slightest bit closer. Not touching, not reaching, just closing enough space for the air between us to warm. I don't choose people who want excitement, he said. I choose people who want connection. The words struck something deep. Something I hadn't even admitted to myself. And you think that's what I want? I asked softly. He didn't rush. He watched me long enough to make sure the question wasn't surface level. Then, I think that's what you're afraid you want. A breath shivered out of me. The conversation felt intimate. Dangerously so, more intimate than anything I had heard through the walls. Because this was direct. This was about me. This was about him, seeing through the facade I had kept so carefully intact. He reached out slowly, giving me time to pull back, and brushed a strand of hair behind my ear. Barely a touch, just enough to let me feel how steady his hand was. I don't want to rush you, he said, voice softening even more. I want to understand you. My heartbeat fluttered painfully. No one had said that to me in years. Maybe ever. He shifted closer, his knee brushing mine. A gentle point of connection that felt like electricity and comfort all at once. "Tell me something true," he murmured. The question was so simple, but it opened something inside me. I swallowed. "I thought I was imagining you." His brows lifted slightly. "How? You're quiet, controlled. And the women? I thought maybe I built an idea of you in my head." My voice softened. "But you're real." His lips curved, not cocky, not amused, warm. "And what does the real version feel like to you?" I breathed in shakily. "Dangerous," I whispered. "But not in a way that scares me." His hand slid to mine, fingers brushing gently, giving me every chance in the world to move away. "I didn't." "Good," he murmured, "because I don't want to scare you." His thumb traced a slow, thoughtful path across my knuckles. "I just want you to stay." The simplicity of the words hit harder than any heated moment through the walls ever could. Because he didn't say want me. He didn't say need me. He said stay, choose, remain, be present. The quietest kind of intimacy, deep, steady, frightening in its sincerity. I breathed in slowly, letting the moment settle between us like something sacred. "I'm here," I whispered. His eyes softened, truly softened, and he exhaled as if he'd been holding that breath for a long, long time. For the first time all night, he looked almost vulnerable. "Good," he said quietly, "because I've been waiting for you longer than you realize." The tension between us didn't break. It deepened, slow, powerful, inevitable. A slow burn spark that promised more than physical closeness. It promised understanding, patience, emotional gravity. Something that would unravel me gently, not consume me fast. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid of what came next. I was ready. For a moment, neither of us moved. The room felt smaller than it was, as if the walls had gently folded inward just to make sure we couldn't step away from whatever was happening between us. His breath wasn't loud, but I could hear it, slow, steady, almost at. If he was afraid that even exhaling too fast might break the moment. "Are you okay?" he asked softly, not out of obligation, not out of politeness, but with that rare kind of sincerity that hits you deeper than you expect. I nodded, but it wasn't a confident nod. It was one of those small, trembling nods that betray more than they hide. He noticed. Of course he did. That was the thing about him. He didn't just listen to the things I said, he listened to the things I didn't. He watched the way my fingers curled inward when I was trying to stay composed, the way my shoulders tightened when memories came too close, the way my voice softened when something inside me needed gentleness instead of strength. "I don't want to overstep," he murmured, taking half a step closer, slow enough to give me time to breathe, gentle enough to let me choose. "But you don't have to pretend with me." Something in my chest loosened just a little. Just enough. I hadn't realized how long I'd been holding myself together with silence and habit. And somehow, standing there with him, it felt safe to let a corner of that facade slip. His hand hovered near mine, not touching, just close enough that the warmth of him brushed my skin like the beginning of a question. I didn't pull away, I didn't want to. "Sometimes," he whispered, "the things we're scared to feel are the ones we've needed the most." The honesty in his voice disarmed me. It wasn't seductive, it wasn't rehearsed. It was real, and real is far more dangerous than temptation. A small smile tugged at my lips, not because the moment was light, but because it felt true, and I couldn't remember the last time something felt that way. He noticed that too, and something softened in his expression as if my smile had answered a question he hadn't dared to ask aloud. I took a slow breath. "I didn't expect any of this," I said quietly. "I didn't either," he replied. "But I'm not running from it." His words settled between us like a warm blanket, comforting, but undeniably charged. And as the silence deepened, it wasn't empty, it was full. Full of what we weren't saying, full of what we were beginning to feel, full of the kind of closeness that grows slowly, intentionally, carefully, like two people learning each other's souls one quiet breath at a time. He didn't touch me, he didn't need to. Just standing that close felt like an answer I wasn't sure I'd been brave enough to ask for. And in that moment, with his voice still hanging in the air, and my heartbeat settling into a rhythm I hadn't felt in years, I realized something. For the first time since my life had changed, I wasn't afraid of what could come next. He didn't move away. If anything, he seemed to settle into the quiet with me, as if he understood that silence wasn't a gap to be filled, but a doorway to something neither of us had stepped into before. His eyes held mine, steady, patient, warm in a way that made my stomach tighten. "You're thinking too hard," he said softly. A faint breath of a laugh escaped me. "Is it that obvious?" He shook his head, just once. "No. I just feel it." He hesitated, choosing his words as if each one mattered. "With you, I notice things I don't usually notice." Something inside me fluttered deep, surprising, almost unsettling. Like what? I asked quietly, not sure I wanted the answer, yet wanting it more than I wanted to protect myself. He swallowed. Like the way you hide your hurt in your shoulders instead of your face. Like how you look away when something touches you too deeply. Like how brave you are without realizing it. I felt my breath catch. Not because his words were flattering, but because they were true. Too true. He took one slow step closer, not bold, not demanding, just deliberate. And when he stopped, the space between us felt warm, charged, alive. I'm not trying to make this complicated, he murmured, but being near you, it does something to me I can't explain. My pulse trembled in my throat. I wasn't used to being seen this clearly. I wasn't used to being wanted this gently. I dragged in a breath, steadying the shake in my voice. You make me feel things I thought were far behind me, I said. He didn't smile. Not fully, but something in his eyes softened, something that looked like relief, like hope, like a quiet confession. Then don't run from it, he whispered. I didn't realize he'd moved until I felt the faintest brush of warmth near my hand. His fingers were so close they almost touched, and yet they didn't. It was the kind of closeness that made you ache with awareness, not because of what was happening, but because of what could. My breath wavered. What if I'm not ready? I whispered. His answer came low, steady, sure. Then I'll walk beside you. You set the pace. Something shifted then, small, subtle, but undeniable. The wall I'd been holding up didn't fall. It simply opened a little, letting warmth seep through the cracks. I felt my fingers inch, almost without permission, until the side of my hand brushed his. Barely. Light as a memory, his inhale sharp and quiet, but unmistakable. He didn't grab my hand. He didn't pull me close. He just let the moment breathe, honoring the fragility of it, the newness of it, the sacredness of someone finally feeling safe enough to let another human being near their heart again. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't bracing myself, I was letting myself feel. If you want, I can continue with the next emotional shift, the deepening closeness, the first vulnerable conversation, or the moment when the slow burn tension rises even more. You said, continue Spetch where ITN ChatGPT said, of course. I'll continue exactly in the same tone, slow burn, emotional, intimate, psychological, romantic, and implied but never explicit, picking up from the exact moment where their hands barely touched. For a second, neither of us breathed. It was astonishing how something so small, so simple, could feel like the ground shifting beneath my feet. His fingers didn't move, and yet the nearness of them, the quiet permission of the moment, felt more intimate than any embrace I'd known in years. He glanced down at our hands, then back up at me. That look, it wasn't hunger. It wasn't impatience, it was recognition. As if he saw the courage it took for me to close even that little bit of distance. And he treated it like something precious. You don't have to pretend you're strong right now, he said softly. I'm not pretending, I whispered back. I'm just learning how to let myself be something other than strong. Something like understanding flickered across his face. Warm, steady, patient. You don't have to learn it alone, he said. His voice had a gentleness that wrapped around me before his touch ever could. And without meaning to, my hand shifted just a little more. This time, our fingers brushed in a way that felt intentional. Quiet, uncertain, but real. A breath slipped from his lungs, almost like he'd been holding it for too long. I've wanted to reach for you, he admitted, but I didn't want to pull you somewhere you weren't ready to go. You're not pulling, I murmured. You're here. That's different. He nodded once, as if he understood the difference better than I did. For a moment, the air felt warmer, thicker, humming with the kind of closeness that didn't need permission because it was built on something deeper than impulse. He didn't lean in. He didn't push. He simply stood there, letting the quiet say everything. Sometimes, he said, eyes still on mine, the smallest step is the bravest one. I felt my throat tighten. What if I take a step and everything changes? His answer was immediate. Then it changes. And maybe that's not a bad thing. The honesty in his voice softened every fear I didn't know how to speak aloud. I could feel my heart beating too high in my chest, like it was trying to reach through the space between us. Can I ask you something? He said gently. I nodded. What made you reach for me just now? The question was quiet, but it landed deep. And the truth rose before I could push it down. Because you didn't ask anything of me, I said. You just made me feel safe. His eyes closed for half a second, not dramatically, just enough to show how much those words affected him. I would never want to be anything else for you, he said. Voice low, steady. The sincerity wrapped around me like warmth in winter. I could feel another shift happening, subtle, but strong enough to change the air between us. I didn't step closer. but somehow the space felt smaller anyway, like the connection tightening thread by thread. His hand finally turned ever so slightly, palm up, not taking mine, not claiming anything, just offering. An invitation, not pressure, not expectation, just presence. And for the first time in years, I felt myself leaning, not in action, but in spirit, towards someone who felt like a soft place after too many hard nights. If you want, I can continue with the next emotional step. The first vulnerable confession, the moment she finally took his hand, the way the atmosphere deepens, or the rising slow burn tension as night and silence hold them together. You said continue spech where IT and ChatGPT said of course. I'll continue in the same slow burn, intimate, emotionally layered voice, picking up exactly where the moment ended, with his hand offered, palm open, waiting, not for permission, but for trust. I stared at his hand for a long second, not because I was unsure, but because of how rare it was to be given a choice so gently. My breath felt caught somewhere between my chest and my throat, suspended in the quiet tension that wrapped around us like warm dusk. He didn't move, he didn't rush, he just let the moment linger, as if he knew I needed that softness, that space, that sense of being allowed to feel, instead of forced to react. My fingers trembled, not out of fear but because of what the moment meant. Taking someone's hand wasn't simple. When you'd lived enough life to know how much weight a touch could carry. I don't want to hurt again, I whispered before I could stop myself. His eyes shifted, not with shock, not with disappointment, but with that deep, quiet empathy that made me feel seen in a way that loosened something inside me. You won't lose anything by taking my hand, he murmured. But you might find something you didn't know you were missing. His words were warm. But more than that, they were steady. Slowly, almost cautiously, my fingers drifted toward his. I wasn't even aware of the breath I held, until the tip of my finger brushed his palm like as a sigh. He inhaled softly, not greedily, not triumphantly. Just moved. Moved in that way a man is only moved when a woman chooses him with something deeper than impulse. When our hands finally met, it wasn't a clasp. It wasn't even a full hold. It was simply my fingers resting in his palm, as if testing the quiet truth of him. The warmth was immediate, comforting, anchoring. He curled his fingers around mine with the gentlest pressure, not claiming, not pulling, just answering the trust I'd offered with one of his own. Is this okay? He asked. The fact that he asked, even after I'd already given him my hand, softened me in ways I wasn't expecting. Yes, I breathed. It's more than okay. A small smile ghosted across his lips, the kind of smile a man wears when he feels something he doesn't yet have words for. He stepped just slightly closer, enough that I felt his presence wrap around me like a quiet embrace without ever touching more than my hand. You're strong, he said, voice low, warm, but you don't always have to be, not with me. The words sank into me, untying knots I'd carried so long I'd forgotten they were there. You say that like you mean it, I whispered. I say it because it's true. His thumb brushed the side of my hand, slow, barely there, but enough to make my breath falter. Not because the touch was bold, but because it was tender in a way I hadn't felt in years. You're letting me in, he said quietly, and I want to honor that. For a moment, I didn't trust my voice. So I didn't speak. I just let my fingers curl into his, not tight, not desperate, just enough to show him I was choosing this moment too. His eyes softened even more, and his breathing shifted. Slower now, deeper, as if something inside him had settled. Tell me what you're feeling, he said. I swallowed. My voice came out softer than I intended. I'm feeling alive, I said, and that scares me more than anything. He lifted our joined hands, bringing mine a little closer to his chest, not all the way, just near enough that I could feel the heat radiating from him. Feeling alive is the first sign of healing, he whispered. And I'll stay right here as long as you want me to. Something in me, something long silent, long bruised, long hidden, unfurled at his words, and in that quiet, trembling moment I realized I wasn't scared of him. I was scared of how natural it felt to let him close. He must have sensed the shift inside me, because his expression softened even further. That warm, steady softness he wore, only when he was being completely honest, completely unguarded. You're not alone in this, he murmured. You're not the only one who's scared. I lifted my eyes, surprised. You, I whispered. He smiled faintly, almost ruefully. You think you're the only one who feels something they didn't expect. He shook his head slowly. You walked into my life and I haven't been the same since. I felt my breath catch again. But this time for a different reason. Because hearing him confess something so vulnerable, It touched a part of me I didn't know was still capable of opening. "What changed?" I asked softly. His gaze didn't waver. "You," he said simply. The word hung in the air, warm and heavy and breathtaking. He looked at me the way people look at something they never thought they'd find. Again, something worth protecting, worth waiting for, worth bruising for. "And that scares me more than you know," he added quietly, "'cause I don't want to mess this up. I don't want to push you, or overwhelm you, or ask for more than you're ready to give." He glanced down at our joined hands. His fingers curved gently around mine and then looked back up. "But I also don't want to pretend I don't feel what I feel." My heart tightened, then softened, as if it didn't know which reaction to choose. "What do you feel?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He stepped half a breath closer, not touching, but close enough that I felt the warmth of him like a quiet promise. "I feel connected to you," he said, "in a way that doesn't make sense and doesn't need to." His voice dropped, softer, deeper. "And I feel protective of you. Not because you're fragile, but because you've been strong for too long." My eyes stung, not from sadness, from recognition. I had spent years being the one who held everything together, who carried what hurt, who smiled through what broke,